Hi, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co.
I'm a raven.
I'm a duck.
Is that what you're doing now?
I might.
We'll see how that goes. But today we are reviewing Scarface 1920 by Red Zen Games, currently on Kickstarter, link down below. So, this is a game where you've probably seen a lot of content around already. There's been a playthrough. From this crew. Yeah. There's been a playthrough already. There's been a playthrough. What, Mark Street?
I reviewed it.
You reviewed it, that's right.
I reviewed it. My first solo video.
Yes, that was fun. So, and then Dice Tower has it as well. Mark Street did a whole coverage of it.
It's true, preview.
Yeah, didn't Mantis people do it? I don't remember.
I'm not sure who else
who did it, but either way.
Everyone's talking about it right now.
So,
this might give you some clues as to how good the game is.
Unnecessary. I guess they saw your review.
And now we're going to do the spin where we say how bad this game is.
This game is horrific and terrible.
5 reasons not to like it.
Scarface 1920. Quick, very short overview of this game is going to be, this is a deck building, area control, worker placement game. It is a game where across, the rounds until you eventually wind to a close, you're going to be slowly building up your deck. Slowly is the key word, we'll touch upon that as well. But you're going to be using your cards in your pre-built deck, plus whatever you add to it in order to take actions. Every round you play between, 1+ cards in order to then take a worker off him, but not in all actions, and put that worker in various locations, from the underworld to the authorities to taking various area control actions, putting more units on the board, attacking other people's areas, stuff like that across the game. There's a lot more going on here. You can watch the playthroughs to get a little more information. What do you want to add?
I was just saying, there's a little bit more going on.
A little more going on. There's a lot going on in this game. It's hard to fully. I love doing.
Every character's asymmetric.
Yes, the characters are asymmetric. The cars are all different. The neighborhoods are different. Everything. You have events. You have federals. Like the feds are going to be constantly raiding you. A whole bunch of stuff going on in this game. That's the general short overview. For more information, you can watch our playthroughs. You can watch her review. All those kinds of things. With that said, we're just going to go ahead and jump straight into it because there's a lot to cover in terms of the general, what we like, didn't like, and see others not liking, and all of that. But before we do, just full disclaimers and whatnot aside, for context here, and I don't always go into the number of times I've played a game. This time I'm going to specifically because this is a lot going on in this game. I have 3 plays under my belt. I think you guys have 4. No, you guys have 5 plays. Like 4.5 plays. 4.5 plays.
The demo play I kind of leave a little loose.
And the reason I'm going into that is because if you've watched our playthroughs, you'll have noticed a whole bunch of mistakes, because I think, at least for myself, every single game I played has had different rules.
Or predictions for what's coming next, because in this gameplay that we're sitting in front of right now, we had to print off new reference cards for some of the things that have changed between the time I got the prototype and the rulebook, did my first gameplay, and then did one with you. And
the
for context,
end game scoring's changing, things like that.
If you swing over to Quackalow's videos on the gameplay, you'll notice a little has sponsored content tag. We did get paid to produce a gameplay for them, so take my review with, a grain of salt, but also I'm gonna be honest.
But she gets nothing, I get nothing, so take that into account as well. Now, with that said, so you already did a review on this game, Shira.
I did.
You already covered stuff, so maybe we'll start with you. What do you like about the game?
What do I like about the game? I like everything about the game.
Oh, everything is way too easy.
I started my video like that. This game has a lot of different pathways towards victory. You can go for goods. You can go for street presence.
Neighborhoods,
You can upgrade your game. You can get cards. You can get deals and jobs. There's a lot going on, and I like that. There hasn't been the same pathway to victory in any of the games I've played. Every player with a different faction has tried a different method.
Yeah, I agree. You, towards the end of last game, you started pivoting to try drive hard towards a full upgrade, because you get huge amounts of cash in the game if you do that.
It was such a weird little transition. I was doing so well at selling until you figured out a way to throw me under the bus.
Which is a direct counter to the fact that I had a presence on the board, and then you literally wiped out my entire presence, my troops, and I sat there.
They just ignored me the whole game.
I was out of it. I never felt like I was out of it. You would have been a real threat if he hadn't started using his system against you.
They ignored me most
To
of the
be
game.
clear, I tried to not ignore you once or twice, and you put up a big complaint. So the idea that you're complaining now about me ignoring you is a little interesting.
It's okay. I'll complain about everything.
Yeah, so there was a lot of pivoting in terms of the strategies we chose. I really leaned hard into, like in the last game, the playthrough, I leaned hard into the cops, just trying to sell my soul to the authorities. And then everything, like you said already, there's lots of pathways in terms of the decks you're building, the end game points, the businesses you run, the general money laundering of whatever, the deals, you're selling lots of goods. Our last game had a fairly minimal amount of selling compared to other games. Everything, there's a lot of pathways to victory. The
variability is just amazing.
I don't really need to touch on all the stuff you all have already touched on. I agree with it wholeheartedly. The thing I want to emphasize as a thematic player, someone that loves story and flavor text, and there's no flavor text in this game, except everything is built into theme and style and narrative. I can talk about how you basically became the police force of the city and had so, like, I imagine your guys walking into the police headquarters, sitting back with donuts and coffee, and the police officers are bringing you snacks while you control the district. It's so brilliantly done, from custom artwork for every single card, to beautiful miniatures and meeples, to an amazing board presence, and all these different messy narrative routes, and messy for me is a compliment, tell different stories, because everything for me lines up with what the narrative of the game should be mechanically. Yeah. And I love that. I love that in a game.
And I have to agree. Like, I before this game even came out, and I was talking about it in one of my, like, upcoming Kickstarters, I talked about how the game looks good, it has mechanics I like, but the theme, it doesn't do it for me. I don't like mobster games. I've always been okay with them, but they don't draw me in. But I agree with you.
And then you got to play Arnold Rothstein.
Well, to be fair, playing the Jewish mobster is a different story, but while I still don't love mobster themes, I do think this is the best implementation I have seen of one. This very much does have, I think you compared it briefly to Scythe, the idea that there's combat and area control in this game, but it kind of plays a backdrop to the general threat of everything else you're doing.
You can't have the city be riddled with gunfire all the time. When war happens and districts switch or neighborhoods fall, it's either a subtle art of police raids, it's through one giant conflict, one street battle, and then slow movement, a car bomb.
Might have happened once or twice.
It is one big explosion that triggers something, but it never feels like you're at a constant state of war. But the threat is always there, and the potential is always there. I also compared it to a game called Feudum.
Yes.
A giant, messy Euro that gives me mechanically rich and like strategically deep pathways, while being a heavy rules teach and a beautifully messy game.
I haven't played Feudum. I'm a little bit more interested in it when you compare it to this. We'll see.
In terms of the depth you have to go to get into it, and then the reward you get for being there, that's where my comparison is. This is not an overly accessible game, but I think it is worth the price you're paying to get to it.
I want to piggyback on your theme. I like how some of the cards actually have characters that we recognize from other situations. Like there was a Bonnie and Clyde card.
Yep.
Yes. They're just amusing, and they add a lot more to the theme, as well as the artwork. The artwork is just on par.
Beautiful. Yeah, the artwork, the components, everything. This is a prototype, but these are...
Even the money pieces, like... Yeah. They're not paper.
It's not paper is a good thing. Yeah. But yeah, no, I agree. I mean, the miniatures are going to be from Big Child Creatives, which are generally have worked with Command a lot. They're known for a lot of their famous miniatures for the miniature quality. I think we're seeing that very much here. The Kickstarter is going to have a lot more unique sculpts of various characters, as well as the buildings.
3 of every unit type.
Yes.
And then your custom worker meeples, the cars, different unique buildings.
Yes.
It's insane.
And none of our factions have the same characters.
Not a single one.
My guys are a little bit heavier than your guys.
None of our factions even have the same base cards.
Yeah.
The artwork on even the same card of the same faction is different.
Custom. Yeah, it's the same abilities, but the artwork's different.
Fascinating. I don't think I noticed that.
Yeah, for myself, in addition to everything they said so far, my biggest thing, and I have a bunch, don't get me wrong, my biggest thing that I like is going to be the broken job cards. And broken, I mean in a compliment. I love, so these job cards are going to be a handful of cards you get during the beginning of the game that you could draft to acquire certain abilities, basically. They're going to have instant use abilities, like the car bomb you played that completely destroyed my units. Later in the game, I played a car bomb on him. It's all good. We're fine.
Didn't play a car bomb, though.
What did you play?
I played an assassin.
I got you back with the car bomb.
One dude, one John Wick with a gun, and I had enough bullets to do it.
Yeah, and there's going to be permanent abilities as well, abilities that will effectively build up your tableau. And these job cards are all broken in their own different ways. They all give you some sort of like just insane thing. Like the idea of taking out like 6 henchmen from an opponent at once is incredible. But then I also used a combination of 3 authority-based job cards to lock in my authority.
And one that I desperately wanted to use, but just never found a way to. I built this nightclub early, so I could put a jazz band in it to start generating $20 extra every time I sold.
Whoa.
Right? And that just slots right here. So they're not only violent job cards, they are thematic and deep. They fit all the different strategies that you might want to go down to try to win the game.
Another thing that sometimes seems broken are the boss abilities. Every boss specializes
feels very broken
in a different thing. I was able to just recruit people for free. I recruited 3 people basically every time I played my boss. You You
I
manufactured.
generated resources better
Yeah.
than anyone else, and it felt so good doing it.
And I forget what you're specialized in.
Mine was actually mine didn't feel
Jobs.
as much.
Jobs.
It's
Jobs.
so it had jobs. I guess maybe that goes to it, but so no. To
I
be
mean,
fair,
that's how he figured out how
No,
to
It is.
do
my
jobs.
my favorite job combinations were my initial game draft. I did enjoy getting the car bomb. That hit you later in the
you
game.
had the ability to make it easier to fulfill those
Yes.
jobs.
Oh,
which
that's
you
true.
used.
Because I
Yes.
only fulfilled, I believe, 2.
I also only fulfilled 2.
You had at least 4.
I had 3 on the board and 1 temporary one.
Yeah,
one
so
instant.
so your boss's ability gave you a slight advantage, but then again, mine also allowed me to sell more than anyone else in that specific
Mine gave
game.
me a bigger deck. Mine gave me more associates, so I didn't have to reshuffle as frequently.
Which is important because, like, in this game, and this is something we'll
That
touch
progresses the
upon.
time and
Yeah.
brings endgame closer.
We'll touch upon this a little bit more in the things I didn't like. We'll cover that. But like doing the whole game, I only recruited 2. No, the last game. It depends on the game. But doing the whole game, I recruited only 2 characters, 2 associates the whole game. And even in other games, I think like it's been like maximum 4 or 5. It's
The
not a
associates
big.
are endgame scoring points
Yeah, they
based
are.
on the stars that you got. So
they're-
I had this many. I had so many
Yeah.
associates.
They're
I
in-game
recruited,
abilities.
I recruited 2.
Yeah, last game was really not a big, and part of that also is going to be the character I had though, because he has one of his abilities is going to be the fact that I can trigger the abilities on associates and then cycle them. So I got to use multiple associates even without having them. But yeah, I mean, so far we have the art, the components, the variability, the theme,
mechanics,
the brokenness,
asymmetry, the brokenness.
Player interaction.
Player
you,
interaction
You
is
feel
huge.
like you
Yeah.
are hurting the other player when you kept taking my goods and
Sure.
you kept taking my control markers off the board.
I thought you said I left you alone.
You took my control markers.
Oh,
You
okay.
denied me 20
This
endgame
game
points.
could be
And I'm okay with it.
strategically peaceful. This game could also be insanely
Yeah.
head-to-head and aggressive.
Yeah.
Like, we were going at it for a bit.
Yeah.
Until you decided she was a bigger threat.
Oh, I'm going to talk about that. But one more thing I want to talk about is the Federals. The idea that during the game you have this constant ebb and flow of decisions to make about the idea of how far do you want to push your threat, how far do you want to move up the Federal track, basically catching the attention of the Feds, because when the raids happen, and they will inevitably happen, you're going to get hit with things depending on how high
Yep.
you've moved up that track, which is a fun little balance.
And Elliot Ness, did you mention Elliot Ness? He
Ness
chases you.
He chases you up the track,
And the
making sure you're
news-
always...
Each event gives you something different for that round. So
Yes.
there was one where we couldn't store more goods.
Chicago
each
was on
city.
fire.
Yeah.
And they're
Sometimes
historic.
there's pandemics where
Yeah.
you kill everybody on the board.
Yeah.
That's not fun.
I think that was what, the Spanish flu that was spreading through? No, seriously. Like, every news event mechanically integrates
And
and thematically integrates.
And
I
changes
can't get off of
the
it.
round, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anything else in the what we like section? Anything I'm missing?
Oh, everything.
Well, tell me something. The upgrade paths, we haven't really... we've touched upon it briefly, but every character is going to have an upgrade path as one of the pathways to victory, giving you in-game bonuses as well as slowly giving you more boss bonuses.
And we had some long turns. I think you're going to bring this up later.
Oh,
but,
I will.
But I also want to emphasize, to some degree, what you're doing on your turn isn't normally that long. Not every single turn is long. You might play
Except
one
if you're
card.
Jesse.
Just yours.
You might play one card. Get off of it. You might play one card and one meeple, and then you're cycling through. If you know how to run this game, you don't need 5-10 minute turns for each person. You can actually play fairly efficiently and fairly quickly until, like you or me for one of the turns, slow down and say, hey, I'm playing my boss card. I'm going to be triggering 3 or 4 or 5 abilities. It's
Yep.
going to be really fun. And then you keep moving along fast.
You can also plan in between everyone else's turns.
Yeah.
It's a deck builder that encourages me to think around my hand management as well.
Very
instead
much.
of
Yeah.
instead
Very
of
much.
playing all the very first demo game we had, we were playing all the cards from our hand right away like you would in a deck builder, pushing the track too fast. We couldn't
Yeah.
manage everything. The deeper I've gotten into this game, the more I'm really thinking about when do I want to play everything? When is it worth the risk to spend way extra resources and to reshuffle very quickly versus one card at a time. Every action has meaning. Every resource has meaning.
That's going to be for a ton of reasons, because first of all, anytime you play more than 2 cards, you're going to be advancing further up the Federal track. Secondly, you're going to have the bonuses of the different cards and the way they interact. You're going to have different cards that will trigger or give you more perks if another card of that color was played. Additionally, there's going to be, like you said already, the management of when do you want to actually go ahead and cycle. There's a lot of different decisions as to why you would want to play cards now versus later versus combining them. Lots of different decisions around that simple decision in the game. Yeah. Anything else? Ready to move on?
I think we're ready to move on.
Cool. So, that brings us to the stuff, because this was a long section. We talked about it for a while, all the things we liked. But, speaking for myself, I have a decent list of things I didn't like as well.
Okay, sure.
Yeah. So, I'll I'll start by touching upon the things we talked about already, which is going to be that turn time. I agree with you that most turns can be pretty quick in this game, but especially when you play your job card and or those times someone feels stuck and they're looking at their cards and they're like, well, which combination, how do I want to plan for the future? You can certainly get stuck in longer turns in this game. I think we had like one turn that was like probably straight up 10 minutes, somewhere in that range.
First off, I'm going to check the timestamp. There's no way it's 10 minutes long. Second off, it is harder to play cards when you got two people ribbing you on camera while you're trying to think through your turn.
I hear.
Really?
I hear. Either way, there are definitely going to be, and not just Jesse. Like I said already, there were times where I played down my job card and I said, hey, this is going to be a longer turn. I got to do my job. Every time you play your boss, you're going to go ahead and activate 3 different abilities from your boss thing. And especially when my boss also, like you said already, helps me trigger jobs. I have so much going on in those single turns. So there were times where I was like, okay, it's going to be a 3-minute break here. Let me do this turn. And that can slow down the game, especially at higher player counts. Which means we haven't touched upon this a lot. I think I like this game best at 3 players. I would happily play it at 4. I would play it at 4. It's still fine, but to combine those longer turns with another player added to the game, and I don't know if they bring enough interaction, that I would play it with 4 just because I want to play this game and there's 4 players there. But 3 for me is going to be my personal preferred sweet spot for this game.
I think you're right. I am interested to see how 2-player works. I know there is a solo mode. I'm intrigued by both of them, but I think hands down, if I was going to put one label, one sticker on the box, 3 players where it's going to sit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anything yourself?
Things I dislike. The area control aspect didn't feel as strong of an area control.
You really like area control.
I like area control. That's my genre that I have a sweet spot for. So the fact that when I was on the board and I had a lot of presents on the board, you guys were barely on the board, but you don't get
because
rewards.
We killed each other.
You don't get rewards for having physical presence on the board. You get rewards for having businesses on the board.
Down,
yeah. So, but I don't get rewards for having these men left up or the control markers necessarily. So that was a little frustrating. Also, you need to get the right cards to build an engine.
Yes.
If you got really good authority cards, that allowed you to go up there and generate so much income every single turn.
And I was thinking about that more as well, because I kept on commenting about one card potentially being broken, but given the gaps in scores, I don't think it was, because I literally had 3 cards that worked perfectly together.
Yeah. Yep.
I think the combination of my cards gave me a broken like system.
It gave you an advantage for that context of that game. I'd like to see some maybe mediation or ability for us to pull you out of the authorities, but I don't even know if that's necessary.
I was able to pull that once, but that was about it.
There was a strong chance that I could have adjusted in a more, like if I'd found this upgrade strategy earlier or something like that.
You could have.
There was a strong chance I could have balanced the game if I'd just known where to shift. And I spent 2 or 3 rounds just reeling from what you did to me.
Yeah, that was the first game I think that anyone went high on the full upgrade, because there are giant chunks of money under those top upgrades that we didn't even realize in prior games because no one had gone that far. It was only when you were stuck that you realized, wait a second, you can get like 150
There's about $100 and something dollars.
Yeah,
right
it's
now.
a lot.
And that's 50%. You won on what? You won on
top row.
You won on 260 or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, you didn't even realize how much. So yeah, I think I had around 260, somewhere in that range. And yeah, but there's a lot of aspects going on there. I'm also going to touch upon.
It's exactly 100, so
100?
you can swing it 100.
Could be a big deal.
It's huge. Yeah, also I want to touch upon the fact, and this is I think potentially my biggest complaint, I don't know, this is a deck building game where there's not as much deck building as I would like. Primarily, and if you're playing as your character, if you're playing as Capone, that will change.
Yeah.
But otherwise, the only way to really get cards on a regular basis, past jobs or whatever it is going to be going to the Underworld. And going to the Underworld is often a bit of a risk, sending people to prison, advancing you on the Fed track. There's a lot of cost benefit to that. And then of course you have to actually develop the deals, you have to actually develop those in order to actually buy the characters you want. Which means I think the most characters I got in any game was 4, I think. And like last game I only got 2, which I have a tremendous amount of fun playing this game, don't get me wrong, but I want more cards in my deck. I'm okay with not having everyone, but I want, if it's a deck building game, give me more than 4 cards in the game.
It's amazing how, and I'll argue against that a little bit, with how powerful some of these cards are. I don't think you could have all of them and still have them be as weird and crazy and specific as they are. That being said, you also have the ability to like pull some of your own hands back. As you upgrade your character, you can get some of your own aids. And for me, I don't mind the lack of deck building because I'm still having just as much fun with my deck. And the struggle for me is I do want more cards, But because I want to play this game 10, 15 times...
You don't want to cycle through all the cards and get bored of them?
I sort of don't mind that they're harder to get, because when I see something like the Gin Importer come out, if I get her into my hand of cards, she's going to inform my strategy moving forward.
You're being Thanos right now. Thanos is like, let's solve the problem with too much people by just halving the number of people.
Double them.
Double the amount of cards.
I don't think they can be as powerful as they are if you let us get more.
I don't disagree with you to the point that I would say that it's not that I'm looking for like 15 cards in a game. I would say given how much fun and how impactful the few cards I've gotten have felt, I'm not looking for the difference between 2 to 4 to jump to 15. I'm looking for that 2 to 4 to jump to maybe 5 to 8. Like, not a huge number, but I would love to be able to get more cards in my deck. To be fair, by the way, I did leave out, you do also get cards in this upgrade path, so I did get one of those as well, from your own personal crew.
I mean,
you get 2.
You get potentially 2, I only got 1.
If the swing is a few cards up by the time it comes out, maybe this is just a little bit easier to recruit.
Yeah.
Maybe something, or maybe there's more lower level cards available.
I'm not addressing how the game balances around it. I imagine there's a lot. I want a little bit more variability from the various cards I can add to my deck.
My least favorite thing?
Go for it.
The Teach.
Oh, I was going to touch
The Teach.
Yeah.
It has to be. It's messy, and I love messy games, and it would also probably be my main criticism on a lot of the games that are my favorite.
Right.
This is a 30-minute Teach.
Yes.
This is, and the reason it is not so complicated when you get into the game, but you're going to need to walk through an entire cycle of turns. You're going to need to teach asymmetric characters. You're going to need to read and specify all these random cards.
How the raids work.
With the chance that you have to reread through those every time you play to some degree until people are really familiar with it. Mm-hmm. And still, you have the complication of Underworld feels like one action. Authorities feels like one action. You're playing your boss card feels like one action, but when you go here, you have 5 other things to do. When you go there, you have 5 other things to do, along with 5 things that you could do here on the board. Every turn, I have a choice of cards, a choice of more powerful cards, and a choice of 15, maybe 20 options that I can use those cards for. It does lead to a bit of AP, although once you're up and running, it's not so complicated.
It does get easier.
The worst part, hands down, is that 30-minute buy time to get it to the table. I want to play this with the same group of 3 people. I want to play this game 20 more times with you 2. I really don't want to teach someone, especially if they're prone to slow play.
I think I can get people up and running faster, but I definitely agree. I mean, I've been doing that 60-second rule thing in a ton of our videos, and I love it. I love like getting it like down to the 60 seconds, and I was like, I got nothing. I was flailing. I was so out of my league with trying to get this game.
You went above 60 seconds, but you didn't include everything.
I couldn't possibly.
Right.
It is a bit of a messy game in terms of trying to get all the aspects. It's a good game.
It's worth
it. It is messy.
It's worth it, but that has to be my least favorite part.
Anything else for you?
I don't know.
So for me, I do have a few smaller things. These are not as big deals. I would say for me, the biggest thing, the Teach I can get over because that's a barrier to entry, but once you're there, you're there.
Sure.
My biggest things are going to be, like I said, the deck building, and what was the other aspect I had? What is the first thing I said? I can't remember. Whatever the first thing I said was. Those would be my 2 bigger issues with the game. The longer turns, yes. The longer turns and the deck building are my biggest things. 2 smaller pedantic things for me. One's going to be the board. I don't love the board. I find that it's kind of linear in the way I don't love how you get from here to there.
You mean the layout? You mean the layout of the map?
I know.
You did not use your vehicles. Your vehicles can go across the entire board in one shot with people.
Not when you play cards that limit their movement, Shira.
That is true.
You just had to pay me.
No, nope. Read that card again. Your job, it limits the ability of the vehicles to move to only adjacent areas.
Because you hired the taxis. You recruited the
that
taxis, which made it so we couldn't just drive across the city.
I mean, that was my broken ability.
Yeah, so I'm okay with the board. But you are right. The cards do make it a little easier. But I feel the board... It's not my ideal board. I'm okay with that. I said already, this is a little more pedantic. The second thing, which is I think I do hope they look into and address, the card text is tiny. And there's a lot of attention given to the picture, which I love.
Do you need new glasses?
Really? No. I'm saying the card text, you don't think it's tiny? You asked me to read every card to you.
No. I haven't had a problem with it.
I haven't either.
Okay. You literally said, read the cards to me.
Well, because I'm sitting here and I don't want to lean over
I understand.
you to read it. I have a problem with that.
No. If the only person who can read the cards is the person directly in front of the cards, I think that's a problem.
So as for that last card, I can read every other card in the row.
Listen, all I can tell you is watch the playthrough. He asked me to do the cards.
You asked me to hand you money every turn.
And I was wrong. with that. No. Okay, we have a huge title of the character, and the card text is small. If you have anyone who's not near the cards, you're not going to see anything.
I think the cards have enough detail and specification on them. You should go over them when they come into the market, like most advanced deck builders.
It's a lot of text.
Like most advanced deck builders, I disagree with you. I do. I don't mind
fine.
it. I understand your criticism. I think you need better prescriptions.
I think I need better friends. But so that's going to be cover. Anything else you guys want to add to the section, or
Anything else I want to add to the section on what I don't like about the game? I want the districts. This is going to be pedantic. I want the districts to be more interesting.
Yes.
Right now, they're simple barrels and guns.
and the dealers?
The dealers. I'd like
Yeah.
the dealers to be more interesting.
Correct.
I don't know how specifically.
Find a way.
But I
There's
would
tons
like
of-
them. They're the least interesting part of my game
Yes.
so far, and they feel like an essential part to it.
I like the businesses to play a little bit more with your cards. There's some cards that
Some cards
occasionally
play with
come
them.
out, but like I specialized in different businesses
And didn't get a lot of things
and
out
didn't
of it.
get a
Yeah.
lot of things out of it.
Yeah, no, but I agree with you. I actually had that on my list. I forgot about it, but
Yeah.
there's so much variability in this game, and there's so much text, which is just
Yeah.
in the game. This is not a game that's scared of text, and yet the businesses, the neighborhoods, and the dealers, those do wind up on the uninteresting side compared to all the cards, all the characters, all the events, all the feds, all the jobs, tons of interesting stuff. And there's two elements that feel like they could use a little bit more attention.
Yeah. Other than that, I don't. Other than just warning people, well, this is going to go to the next section of your review.
What can we see others not liking?
It's messy. It's messy. And I understand
Chaos.
that a lot of people don't like those type of games.
Yep.
That's one of the biggest things I look for in games. You like powers and abilities. You like area control. I like a game that gives me freedom to break it, to play, to feel like I just crushed something that wasn't supposed to be broken.
Yeah.
Like,
Well, so I agree and disagree. I don't love messy as a general concept, but I do very much like messy in terms of the jobs, that aspect of trying to combine a few jobs that worked in a powerful broken
when I
combination.
realized you were doing that to
were
rip
so
buildings, first off, it meant I lost for the most part. Like I still thought I had a good and I stayed competitive, but it was so crushing and also so fulfilling that you could do that to me.
Yeah. It's a lot of fun, but that goes back to I love the combination of those things working out in a way that's great, whether it's your character, whether it's cards, whether it's the jobs, any of those things. But that might be a problem for you if you don't enjoy being in a game where someone suddenly does something with two cards and abilities, and it might be frustrating.
You need to be able to think on your feet.
Yep.
It is head-to-head messy, which means you need to be able to both give and take a lot of punishment. And on top of that, if you have strong AP, if you're playing with friends who have strong AP, that messiness leaves room for some frustration.
Yeah.
But
I really want to harp on that. I mean, in our last game, you literally ripped out a neighborhood from underneath me. You killed all my units. You forced me to completely pivot my strategy.
I stole your neighborhood. Yeah.
I countered by slowly but surely car bombing you and taking your neighborhoods. I stole 2 neighborhoods from you.
Yep.
4 rounds deep while I'm sitting here going, what are you doing? And you're just looking at me, smiling, until I finally realize that what you've done is you've taken over the police department to such a degree that they're now raiding my buildings and removing me from the map.
This is an aggressive game. It's a game where you will be hurt, and it also has to a degree to a war of attrition, which is going to be very dependent on your group. But to a certain extent, we started going head to head just out of sheer you did this to me, I'm going to do that to you.
Very fun.
That is a lot of fun for us. It might not be fun for you, particularly if you're a group, and this is where I think we are good at it. We're good at doing the head-to-head, but if I'm worried about Shira winning, suddenly I start attacking
Shifting.
her buildings. But if you might find
You
yourself
could
in
have
a...
kept just driving me into the ground at the expense of both of us.
While the third player sits there and wins. Those things can happen in this game. It's very much a mean game.
The game itself, outside of the players playing, is also mean. Those
sense?
federal cards,
federals are
they
vicious.
feel at times unfairly cruel. I think they're fairly cruel. I don't think they're unfair, but just like every other element of this game, I have to emphasize this game doesn't apologize for hurting you.
Yeah.
And if you don't like that, if you can't laugh at a game that just set all your warehouses on fire,
But there's a big but. It doesn't apologize for hurting you, but I've never yet seen a situation where I felt stuck. Both those things are important to note.
Sure.
I've played a lot of games where you occasionally have that bad game of that, whatever it is, and then you're just sitting in a corner hoping you kind of recover. I've never felt that way in this game, despite how much it hurts you. It lets you pivot, it lets you adjust, but you do have to be comfortable with the fact that what you just planned on the last 2-3 turns is going to have your feet swept out from under you.
My favorite federal one is where you get to pick for the players the thing that will hurt them most.
That was a fun one. Yeah. There's a lot of fun aspects of the game, a lot of variability, a lot of different things. I think which brings us now to score and final thoughts.
anything you see people not,
The chaos and the brokenness. Those were
Sure.
the 2 things that I had on my list. Just that card combo, and you got them all by drafting.
By drafting
which is,
at the beginning.
Not
Well,
fair.
so to be fair, no. Well, I mean, I saw those cards in my opening hand. My opening hand had 3 of the 4 worked well together, and I took one of them. And I was like, I hope one of these comes back to me,
Yeah.
And it
it did. and then combined with one lucky card from one of the two of you, I don't remember which one, it led to a good combination of things.
Yeah.
But it does mean, and it's interesting because I didn't lean into it until Jesse forced me into it. I didn't even realize how good it was, and then Jesse just kind of said, you got nowhere to live, you got no people, go scrounge for food. And I turned to the cops, and I never looked back. It's thematic, I love it. But
What do you rate this?
me first?
Yes.
Sure. So,
I already rated it on my other video.
are you sticking to your rating?
I'm not sure.
We'll see in a second. So, for me, this one is a 4 out of 5. Now, let's go through the rating system in a second and the explanation of that. First of all, in general, and I don't know what you're going to be doing for your rating system, I'll just explain my rating system. One is a bad game. 2 is a game that's not for me, or I see too many issues with it to really enjoy playing. 3s are solid, good games. 4s are great games, and 5s are games that, if anyone in my game group does not like it, I'm sad because it means I play it less often. Scarface has a lot of potential to grow. I am curious how it plays out over the course of the development of the game. This is a prototype. We probably should have mentioned that at one point. This is a prototype. This is definitely very much not a final game in any number of different ways. Right now, there are a little bit too many things that I have. Like, we spent a lot of time praising this game. We also spent a decent amount of time complaining about it and telling you why it might not be a game for you.
Yeah.
And those things do those things go hand in hand. The longer turns, the fact that there were times where I was sitting there for what I think was genuinely 10 minutes waiting for my turn.
We were able to rib you so many times that it was a long time.
Every rib increased the length of time
You're right, I did have fun. Never mind. But no, but seriously, the occasional long turns, the fact that the deck building, I every time I play this game, I wanted to get more cards. It doesn't have to be 10, 15, but
sure.
I want more cards in my deck building game. There's different aspects, and then a variety of small complaints that all add up. Those things do stop this from being a 5 out of 5 for me, at least where it is right now, but it very much is a game that I am tremendously enjoying. It's a game I am looking forward to getting back into. We didn't really talk about the playtime so much, but a 2-hour playtime is very reasonable for the game that we're playing here. I like this game a lot. A few things keep it shy of that 5 out of 5, but it's one that I'm really enjoying. At the current prototype stage. Let's go to you before we find out if she changed.
Go to me.
Yes.
Okay. So my rating system is a little bit different. I do a bourbon scale.
I apologize in advance.
And so the way I'm going to describe this, first off, I have 5 bottles of bourbon that I have at home. These are going to be... What? No, these are going to be the Basil Hayden's rum-finished bottles. You cannot get the Basil Hayden's bourbon with a in the rum-finished cask anymore. They make, by far, the best rum and coke you will ever have.
Bourbon?
No, here's the thing. When I moved out of Washington, D.C., my friend and I found one liquor store in D.C. that still had some of these bottles.
This is what his turn felt like.
We went home with 12 of them. I still have 5 sitting on the shelf. I celebrate every single time I pull one of those out for a special occasion. This game's a 5 out of 5. That's what this is. This game represents those 5 bottles, that special occasion, that honorary. It has to be. And you take it with a grain of salt, take it with a caveat. It's so messy. It's so beautiful. And for me, I'm predicting 5 out of 5, or I'm saying 5 out of 5 with the caveat that it is still prototype form.
Yeah.
I think when this game, if it holds to the promises it's made me now, it will be amazing when it arrives. It could be a 4 out of 5 when it arrives. I'm doing the same as you. You're saying it's 4 out of 5 moving up. I'm saying it's 5 out of 5 right now, with the chance that if I get 10 plays in and things get tweaked a little bit too much or too differently, there's a chance that it drops down a little bit. But it has to be leaned over on that side for me. I love it too much.
To you.
I'm probably saying the same things that you are. It was a 5 out of 5 with my initial gameplay. It dropped down a little bit to a 4 out of 5, mainly because I still struggle with getting an engine built, and I felt far behind when I couldn't get one built in the game.
Okay.
So that's why it kind of dropped down for me. I'm hoping that with...
To be fair, you said early on in the game that you were basically playing an area control game, even though it's not an area control game. So you're like, I'm playing just to have fun, not to win, but it did happen.
True. If I shifted my focus, I probably could have won. But I'm hoping that when the final copy comes out, it can go back up to a 5. I'm hoping that they'll tweak some things, make some changes, and I can push it back up.
It sounds like we're all right on that edge.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. It has issues. Yeah.
I was thinking it'd be nice if you can draft a couple starting people.
Yeah.
I was just thinking about that.
Oh, that would be fun.
Like,
You'd be curious.
If we can draft a couple just to improve our deck in the beginning.
Just a little bit.
A little bit, and then we can start getting those combos to build off of each other.
I'd be curious what it would do to the round structure.
You potentially take out one card from your starting deck. There are things you could balance. Yeah. Again, we're not here to balance it. We're just here to talk about it.
Cool. That's been a review.
That is basically it. a 5, a 4, and a 4/5.
We're all on that
We have
edge.
4 opinions amongst 3 people. It's all good. That's basically it. That's going to be Scarface 1920. Link down below to the Kickstarter page. Until next time, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co.
And I'm a duck.
I'm a raven.
We'll see you next time.